If you didn't already know, if you complete the Pokemon Home Sword and Shield Pokédex, and its Isle of Armor DLC, and its Crown Tundra DLC Pokédex, you can get yourself a shiny Keldeo. Every one of these Pokemon must originate from Sword and Shield, shown by this symbol. This is the only way to receive one, so if you're a Pokemon fan like me, this is a necessity. Sword and Shield's base game have 400 Pokemon to catch, and both DLCs have 210 each. Added together, this means you have to catch 820 Pokemon. Except that's not quite true. Because of some overlap between the game and its DLCs, you actually only need 583 Pokemon. That is still over half the entire Pokédex, but much more manageable. So today, I will be going over absolutely everything needed to obtain shiny Keldeo. Also, please like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. This took a really long time to make. Starting off, what games do you need to complete this challenge? Well, the easiest route would be to get both Sword and Shield, both DLCs for both games, and 2 Nintendo Switches to trade between the two games. This is how I will be playing it for the guide. Fortunately, there are ways to reduce the amount needed. If you already have Pokemon Legends Arceus, you can reduce the amount of Nintendo Switches to 1. While many Pokemon need trade evolutions to evolve, there is only one in this game that is absolutely required: Porygon. Fortunately, that Pokemon also makes an appearance in Legends Arceus, so you can take a Porygon native to Sword and Shield, send it to Legends Arceus via Pokemon Home, and evolve it there since it only needs the upgrade and the Dubious Disc instead of the trait itself. If you have a Living Dex, or at the very least have all of these or these Pokemon, you can remove one set of DLCs, but not both. If you do remove one set of DLCs, you will have to start a second profile and replay through some sections of the game, including becoming the champion, which I will explain later. So, worst case scenario, both games, both DLCs for both games, and 2 Nintendo Switches. And best case scenario is also both games, both DLCs for only one game, and just one Nintendo Switch. Secondly, the order I catch the Pokemon in is by efficiency, instead of catching them at the earliest possible moment. So if you find a Pokemon earlier than when I mention it, by all means catch it there, it just means you can skip some later. And lastly, this took me about 58 hours to complete, but this time also includes me getting a Living Dex instead of just completing the Pokédex, and having to catch some Pokemon multiple times. For example, Feebas, which I ended up catching 5 whole times in 4 different areas. By the way, the highest chance of catching a Feebas is at a 5% chance while fishing at the Balamere Lake. In my opinion, you can easily get this down to below 48 hours, and if you know what you're doing, you could probably get this in about half the time. And with that out of the way, let's begin. To start, you will need to set up 3 characters, one on Sword, one on Shield, and a third one to get yourself the last starter. For the third character, all you need to do is get to the point where you can catch a second Pokemon, put your starter in the PC, send it to home, and finally send it to your main profile. This will take about half an hour. I also recommend that for your main Shield profile you choose Grookey, since it can learn the TM False Swipe. While in Sword, you can use Seedot and its evolutions instead. Now we will go through more long cutscenes before we can start catching Pokemon on Route 1. I should also mention the 3 categories of wild Pokemon in this game: Visible Encounters, Hidden Encounters, and Wanderers. Visible encounters are seen in the overworld and are randomly generated. They can despawn if you go too far away, and a new randomly generated Pokemon will take their place when you get close again. Hidden encounters come from these little exclamation points that appear while walking in the grass. They are slower to encounter, and you don't know what you will be getting until the battle starts. But they also hold rare Pokemon you might not be able to find anywhere else in the game. And lastly is the Wanderers, which are guaranteed spawns in certain locations. Usually they are based on the weather of that area and respawn once per day, but many of these Wanderers you find have unique properties and some never respawn once encountered. I'll mention any notable Wanderers as we pass by, but I won't be catching any that never respawn. So, starting with Visible Encounters, we will be catching Squavit, Rookidee, and Wooloo. For Hidden Encounters, we will catch Caterpie and Grubbin. And there are no Wanderers on this route. Moving on to Route 2, our Visible Encounters are Nickit, and Choodle, and our hidden encounters are Blipbug and Purloin. And we will have our first Wanderers on this route, but none I will be catching. First, we have Choodle, which we already caught, but second is a Yamper. You can catch them on this route at 5% visible encounters, but we will be catching them later on Route 4 since they are 20% there instead. Also, this Yamper does not respawn once you start a battle with it, so if you want it, save before encountering. After several more minutes of cutscenes, you make your way to the wild area for the first time. There are a plethora of Pokemon here for you to catch, which can vary based on the weather in each location, and even raid dens for you to get even rarer Pokemon. But I will be waiting until I am completely done with the story in the main game, as well as the DLCs before touching them. There are multiple reasons for this. First is you just won't be able to catch some Pokemon. At this point in the game, if you encounter anything above level 20, it'll be a very strong looking Pokemon, and you won't be able to catch it. This increases by 5 levels per badge until you get your 8th badge, where the restriction will be lifted. Then, you also have some types of weather being unable to appear until certain points in the game. For example, snowstorms and sandstorms don't appear until you reach Hammerlock for the first time, and you must become champion before fog can appear. One thing that isn't really mentioned anywhere is that some areas of the Isle of Armor DLC, like the Forest of Focus, cannot have sandstorms until the story is complete. And I wouldn't be too surprised if thunderstorms were also restricted in the Crown Tundra until a certain point. So I will save going through the wild areas, including DLC wild areas, until all the stories are complete and take care of them all at the same time. The only thing you need to know right now is that if you see any berry trees in the wild area, you should shake them until a wild Pokemon appears. We are looking for a Cherubi, who can only be found in berry trees. This ranges from a 5% chance to a 50% chance, depending on which tree you shake. Also, there is only a single tree on the main routes that can hold a Cherubi, so don't bother shaking them unless mentioned otherwise. Oh, and if you want to complete a living dex, then you're going to need to catch 2 Cherubi, since you'll need the unevolved form and its evolution. Entering Motostoke, we go through some more plot stuff, then enter the Pokemon Center in the upper left area of the map, and purchase the TM False Swipe from this clerk for 10,000 Pokédollars. Also, now that we have access to fly, you can now access both DLCs by flying back to Wedgehurst Station and catching this Slowpoke. If you wish, you can go to the Crown Tundra early. There, you can start a Dynamax adventure, which fortunately is not required to complete the Crown Tundra Pokédex, but can land you a level 65 to 70 Pokemon that obeys you, allowing you to quickly breeze through the game. Anyways, now we will be moving on to Route 3. For visible encounters, we have Vulpix and Sword only, Growlithe and Shield only, Zigzagoon, Gossifleur, Stunky, Trubbish, Tyrogue, and Roly-Coly, who can only be found on the western side of the route. And for our hidden encounters, we have Machop and Mudbray. There is also a Sizzlipede here as a 1% hidden encounter. I cannot stress enough how tedious this would be to catch here, but there are 2 alternative options to catching it. One is a limited time encounter during the Motostoke Gym trial later, and one is in the Crown Tundra DLC in Harsh Sun only as a 20% hidden encounter, so I recommend waiting until later to catch it. We also have the only berry tree on a route that can contain Cherubi at 20% here. Every other berry tree on a route either has a guaranteed Squavit or Greedent. And we have a single Wanderer on this route as well. But you have to come back after talking to Sonia to find Corvisquire. It respawns every time you leave, so you don't have to worry about failing to catch it. Just whistle to get its attention. Honestly, I only remembered this one while editing and really should have gone back for it, but we'll add it now. Heading to the Galar Mines, we have our visible encounters. Woobat, Diglett, Drillbur, Roggenrola, and Timber. There are no hidden encounters here, but we do have a Wanderer, Carkol. It respawns every time the player enters the area. On Route 4, we have Electrike, Galarian Meowth, which you will need to collect a second one for trade later, Pumpkaboo, Yamper, Pikachu, which I recommend catching in Sword, Eevee, which I recommend catching in Shield, Milcery, catch 2 for Living Dex, and Joltik. Once we enter Turffield and go through yet another cutscene, We enter the gym and we'll be trading with this NPC, one of our Galarian Meowths, for an original Meowth. We will need to evolve this Meowth into Persian at level 28 to complete the Pokédex. And while you're here, pick up this Everstone. You're gonna need it later. Now, before we obtain the first gym badge, I have something very important to explain first. There are 3 Pokemon that you can only obtain via breeding or raid dens. These are Wynot, Cleffa, and Igglybuff. Wynot and Cleffa only appear as 1-star raids, which become rarer after the 1st and 3rd badge, and stop appearing altogether after the 4th badge. Igglybuff appears in 1 and 2-star raids, so it'll stop appearing once you obtain the 6th gym badge. If you don't want to go through the process of breeding them, then this is your best chance to obtain them. Also, you can get yourself an early Charmander as well, as long as you don't have the 4th gym badge yet. Anyway, I will go through a very quick tutorial on how to obtain them now, as well as a trick that'll be very important later. So even if you're not interested, please stick around. Alright, so starting with Wynot, it can appear at this raid den at the Motostoke Riverbank at a 35% chance. Throw a wishing piece in and make sure it is a common raid, showed by the red beam instead of the purple beam. Once you do, check the Pokemon inside to see if it is a Wynot. If not, click Invite Others, then open up the Home menu, go to System Settings, then System, then Date and Time, and move your clock forward 1 day. As long as your game was in the Trying to Invite Others menu, it will not realize you manually moved the day forward, and the game will roll over to the next day. You can tell this worked if your raid den lights back up. This will cause the raid den to update the Pokemon within until you get your desired Pokemon. This trick is very simple, has literally no consequences if you fail, and works on any version of the game. And we will be using this trick multiple times throughout this playthrough, as without this glitch, or exploit, or whatever you'd like to call it, this would take a whole year to complete. Oh, and if you want to jump forward now, here's the timestamp. Next, Cleffa can be found here in Rolling Fields at 35% through common raids. And Igglybuff can be found in the Isle of Armor DLC at the Fields of Honor at this raid den at 60% for 1-star raids and 30% for 2-star raids, both common. And lastly, if you want Charmander, you can get it in this raid den in Hammerlock Hills at 10% for 1-star and 30% for 2-star raids, but these will need to be rare raids. For this raid den specifically, I recommend you wait until you have at least 1 gym badge, but before you have 3, because unlike the others, its chance of appearing actually increases after the first gym badge. And now I also gotta talk about how to force a rare raid to appear. So before you start, turn off autosave, then save in front of this raid den. Next, drop a wishing piece into the raid den, and it'll ask you if you want to save. You click yes, and about a quarter to half a second later, open your home menu. You will have a small window before the game actually saves, where you can see what raid it was. If you couldn't see what raid appeared, then most likely it was a rare raid, since there is a slight delay when they appear. Anyway, if it was a common raid, then just close out your game and reopen it. If you were too slow, then you've wasted your wishing piece. If you need more, then you can just purchase one for 3000 watts, which is a slow grind, but you can also just pick them off the floor at roughly a 1% chance each spot. You will either need to defeat that raid that appears to clear out the raid den, or you'll need to drop a wishing piece in another raid den, then return to drop one in there, costing 2 wishing pieces instead of 1. Anyways, back to the guide. We complete the first gym and head to Route 5, where our visible encounters are Farfetch'd, Sword Only, and Catch 2 for Living Dex, Swirlix, Sword Only, and Catch 2 for Living Dex, Spritzy, Shield Only, and Catch 2 for Living Dex. Also, we're going to have to discuss Swirlix's and Spritzy's evolutions near the end of the video. There's a way around them, but it's not going to be fun. Stuffle, Minccino, Wobbuffet, who you'll need to breed while holding a Lax Incense if you didn't already catch a Wynot, and Drifloon. There's also a Wanderer Eldegoss at the end of this bridge which will not respawn once encountered. If you head inside the nursery, you can also receive a free Toxel, but you will need to catch another one later if you're planning a Living Dex. Entering Holbury, we'll be going fishing for an Arrokuda, Chinchou, and Basculin. Then after receiving badge number 2, we will be heading to the Galar Mine number 2, where we will catch Scraggy, sword only, and catch 2 for living dex, Krogunk, shield only, Shellos, Wimpod, Binacle, Noibat, and Shuckle. We will also go fishing here for a Barboach and a Corphish. Also, all over the floor here are these little Pokeballs, which are actually Stunfisk. They respawn every time you leave. You can also find a single Dreadnought here near the end of the cave, which does not respawn. Exiting the cave to the Motostoke outskirts, we have Sock, sword only, Throw, shield only, Salandit, shield only, Noctowl, Sudowoodo, Coughing, and Hatena. And we can finally return to Motostoke, where we can take on the 3rd gym. Here, we have to catch or defeat multiple wild Pokemon, and the most important part of this is Sizzlipede. Here, it is guaranteed to spawn, but only until the end of the gym trial, where you won't be able to catch it here ever again. Like I said before, there are still a 1% hidden encounter on Route 3, and a 20% hidden encounter at the Giant's Foot in the Crown Tundra in harsh sun, so I strongly recommend catching it here. Next, we head to Hammerlock, where we will get ourselves a Strawberry Sweet from the east side of town near this Pokeball statue. You can also go to this Pokemon Center and talk to this NPC to purchase a Whipped Dream and a Sachet for 10 BP each. You can gain BP by either participating in the Battle Tower, or by going to Pokemon Home and transferring Home points into Battle points. Lastly, you can buy Dusk Balls here, and Timer Balls as well, at the same Pokemon Center, which will come in handy throughout this game. Moving on to Route 6, we have for our visible encounters, Galarian Yamask, who we need an extra to trade later on, and a 3rd if you want a living dex, Helioptile, 2 for living dex, Dugtrio, Maractus, Trapinch, 2 for living dex, and Axew, 2 for living dex. For our hidden encounters, we have Silicobra, Duskull, Hippopotas, and Skorupi. There are no Wanderers on this route, but you will want to shake this berry tree for a guaranteed Greedent. And I should also mention that Torkoal, Hawlucha, Durant, and Heatmore can all spawn as hidden encounters, but all have very low chances of being found. Fortunately, they all have places where you can catch them later. We also have Karalis here, who will turn your fossils that you find into 4 abominations, but we can get into that later. After our 4th gym, in Stowonside, we head to the Glimwood Tangle, where there are no visible encounters. So, our hidden encounters are Ponyta, shield exclusive, Oranguru, shield exclusive, Passimian, sword exclusive, Morgrim, Shiinotic, Sinistea, Hatchrim, Phantump, and Indeedee. And if you interact with this mushroom, you can encounter an Impidimp as well, which respawns every time you leave. At the Balanlea Stadium, you can trade your extra Galarian Yamask for an original Yamask. We will need to evolve it into a Cofagrigus at level 34. Beating the 5th gym, we head back to Hammerlock, continue mashing A through the cutscenes, and head east to Route 7. Here, we get Berserker, Galvantula, Thievul, Liepard, Inkay, and Morpeko as visible encounters. And for the hidden encounters, we have Toxel, if you need a 2nd for a living dex, Corviknight, Meowstic, Carablast, and Shelmet. Moving up to Route 8, it is divided into its hot southern side and cold northern side. On the southern side, we have for our visible encounters, Solrock, sword only, Lunatone, shield only, Rufflet, sword only, Volibey, shield only, Golett, Poniard, Boldore, Girder, and Togedemaru. For the hidden encounters, we have Sandaconda, Rhyhorn, Dusclops, Haunter, Bronzong, and Hippowdon. And for our wanderers, we have Phalanx, who can spawn all over this route and respawn when you leave, and Crustle, who will never respawn. We are also going to want to get this shiny stone located here in the southeastern section of the map. On the northern half of Route 8, we have Snom, Snorunt, Sneasel, and Vanillish. We get our 6th gym badge, suffer more cutscenes again, and make our way down to Route 9, which is divided into 3 sections. Before getting any of them though, we are first heading down and upgrading our bike to ride on water. Then we are heading back up to the northern section to catch Pelipper, Gastrodon, Jellicent, Marini, and Puku Muku. God, that's a mouthful. All of those are visible encounters. For our hidden encounters, we have Cramorant and Octillery. Then we ride our bikes across the water under the bridge for Quillfish and Mantine. And finally finish it off by fishing for a Wishy-Washy. Oh, and you can also find a Wanderer Glalie here that does not respawn. For the middle section, we will first be heading to this middle island here to catch Clobberpuss, Bergmite, Barbaracle, Toxapex, and Delmise. Delmise is a 1% visible encounter, and shows up nowhere else unless you want to go fishing for a 10% chance at the Challenge Beach in the Isle of Armor. You can also do this on the southern half of Route 9, where you can get around 7 visible encounters, but it is significantly harder to get them to despawn, and your chances of encountering random Pokemon is much higher. Personally, I prefer the southern half of Route 9 over this spot here. Anyways, while surfing, we will also catch Wailmer, Remoraid, and Mantine. And we will finish off Route 9 with a Wanderer Grapploct, which spawns all over the place and respawn when you leave. The southern third of Route 9 only has repeats, so we won't need to catch any of them here, and can just go and get the 7th gym badge. We head back to Hammerlock, get our 8th badge, and take the train to Route 10, which is divided into its southern and northern halves. On the south side, we have Mr. Mime, catch 2 for Living Dex, Cubchoo, Snover, Glalie, and Vanillux. And our hidden encounter is Clang. For the north, we have 2 Wanderers, Abomasnow and Beartick. Both respawn when leaving the area. You can also find a Duraludon as a visible encounter at 1%, but is also a Wanderer later that respawns daily, so we will skip it for now. Now we reach Winden, where we will head to the first Pokemon Center to buy as many of the best items we can obtain in this game. Quick Balls. I will pretty much be catching the rest of the Pokemon in Quick Balls. More plot stuff happens and the Darkest Day appears, and that's a good thing because Dust Balls now have a 3 times catch rate everywhere until you catch Eternatus. And that's not even a joke. But for now we have to go to the Slumbering Weld where we will catch Weezing, Munna, and Orbeetle. Also, we're going to go fishing for a Wish Cache. Then we get the Rusty Sword or Shield depending on the game, and return to Hammerlock to fight Eternatus. And then more plot stuff happens, and then you get a guaranteed catch on Eternatus, so go ahead and throw whatever you feel like it'll look best in. Then you fight Leon, roll credits, meet Hop again in the post-game, as well as the 2 worst characters in history, then go through a whole hour of cutscenes, then battle, then cutscene, then battle, until you catch your box legendary. Oh, and I should remind you, you still have to go through all this again. Also, now that you're champion, head to Hop's house and go to Leon's room to steal his Charmander. Then go to the new battle tower to receive Type Null. Type Null evolves via friendship and cannot breed, so if you evolve it before registering it to Pokemon Home, you will have to go pick up another Type Null on your other game. Next, we are heading to the Isle of Armor and will be going through the whole story. There, we will have to make a decision. Now, remember how I said earlier that you would need a second profile if you didn't have both DLCs for both Sword and Shield? Well, in both DLCs, there are Pokemon that you can get in either game, but you must choose between the 2, with one being locked away from you permanently. Kind of like the fossils in older gen games. The choices are Bulbasaur and Squirtle in the Isle of Armor, Regieleki and Regidrago, as well as Glastrier and Spectrier in the Crown Tundra. If you're going through both DLCs in both games, then you're already set. But if you only have one set of DLCs, either for Sword or Shield, then you will need to make a second profile and play again. And you can't cut too many corners either, because in order to get Glastrier and Spectrier, you have to become the champion. Anyways, for the Isle of Armor, you'll need to go through the whole story on one profile to get Porygon. But for the other profile, you'll only have to go far enough to get Bulbasaur or Squirtle, whichever you didn't choose in your first profile. That means through the Isle of Armor DLC, you will receive Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Cubfu, Urshifu through Evolution, and Porygon. Then for the Crown Tundra, we'll have to go through all 3 of Peony's legendary clues, as well as Sonia's Footsteps side story. Here we get Cryogonal, can be found anywhere in the Crown Tundra as long as the place is snowing or has a snowstorm, It will be necessary for the story. Registeel at the Iron Ruins at the Giant's Bed. You'll just need to whistle at the door for it to open. Regirock at the Rock Peak Ruins at the Giant's Bed. You'll need your lead and your party to hold an Everstone, like the one you got in Turffield. Regice at the Iceberg Ruins in Snowslide Slope. You'll need the lead party to be a Cryogonal. Regieleki and Regidrago are found at the Split Decision Ruins at the 3-Point Pass. And you must have Regirock, Ice, and Steel in your party to enter. Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres' legendary clue can be started by going to the Dino Tree. Afterwards, Articuno is in the Crown Tundra at the Snowslide Slope, where you have to guess which clone is the real one. Save before choosing for an easy time. Zapdos is in the base game's wild area. Start at Motostoke and then exit, then turn immediately right to try to catch it. Even if you fail, Zapdos will eventually grow tired, allowing you to catch up instead. Moltres roams around the Isle of Armor's sky. Just stand about here, and when it gets close, either whistle or ring your bike's bell to get its attention. Save immediately once you do. Walk over here just outside of Freezington in the Crown Tundra to activate this cutscene, which allows you to start investigating footprints. Once you collect 50 of each footprint, head back to Sonia, and the Swords of Justice will now spawn in their respective locations. Cobalion will be on this island in the Frigid Sea, Terrakion will be in the Lakeside Cave, and Virizion will be near the old cemetery at the Giant's Bed. Lastly is Legendary Clue 1, which you just put Peony's pillow on the statue, then follow the prompts to catch Calyrex, Glastrier, and Spectrier. One thing to note about Calyrex's story is that you'll need at least 8 pieces of Dynite ore, so you may have to go through Dynamax Adventure a few times. And with that, we finally get to the wild areas. For the wild areas, date skipping will be very important. Just a reminder, all you have to do is activate any raid den, click invite others, you don't even need to be online, then move your date forward to the desired date. It's incredibly simple. The date skipping is necessary because on certain dates, certain weather is guaranteed. So every first day of the month, the base game wild area will have the same weather, the 15th of every month will set the Isle of Armor to the same weather, and the last day of every month will set the Crown Tundra to the same weather. Although with the Crown Tundra, some places cannot have rain or thunder. Now, before we start, there are some things to keep an eye out while date skipping. This includes trees that you need to shake for certain Pokemon, and weather that has no assigned date but you'll still need for some Pokemon. First, every day, shake down the trees in the wild area for Cherubi if you haven't already caught one. You'll need 2 for Living Dex. And every day, you'll want to shake the trees in the Isle of Armor as well for an Applin. And as a bonus, this specific tree in the Stepping Stone Sea has a 10% chance to spawn both of Applin's evolutions, Flapple and Sword, and Appleton and Shield. If you don't want to do that, you can either lend this boy an Applin in both Sword and Shield, or happen to pick one up here in the Soothing Wetlands, here in Loop Lagoon, or here at Axu's Eye. By the way, you can only get tart apples in Sword and sweet apples in Shield. Next, you'll need to be on the lookout for sandstorms in the Forest of Focus, which do not appear until you have completed the Isle of Armor's story. So you can catch yourself a Sandslash, located all over the forest, and an Escavalier, located by the pond with a raid den. You will also need a sandstorm in the Training Lowlands for a Scizor, located by the warm-up tunnel entrance. And lastly, we will need a thunderstorm at the Balamir Lake for Electabuzz, a visible encounter, Elekid, a hidden encounter, Dragonair in the water near the back of the lake, Dragonite by this ramp right where you spawn when flying in here, Armaldo if you continue following the path before the ramp, and Electivire at these ruins on the opposite side of the lake. And that is everything. Now let's get started on the wild areas. We will start at the beginning of the year at January 15th in the Isle of Armor, since January 1st has no weather assigned to it. January 15th in the Isle of Armor has foggy weather, which prevents status conditions. Starting in the Fields of Honor, we have Buneary, Jigglypuff, remember you will need a breed for an Igglybuff if you don't have one yet, Ralts, Abra, Klefki, and Blissey. As a hidden encounter, we also have Happiny. On the beach, we have Slowpoke, which you will need 3 total for the Living Dex, or just 2 otherwise. Surfing on the water, we have Wingull and Tentacool. And as wanderers, we have Wigglytuff by the cliffs, Kadabra near the beach, Starmie on the beach, and Zorua near the station. In the soothing wetlands, we have Dunsparce, Lickitung, and Bouffalant. And for wanderers, we have Azumarill everywhere, Poliwhirl in this puddle near the Brawler's Cave, and Comfey found throughout the wetlands. In Brawler's Cave, we have Whismur, Azurill on land, and Poliwag in the water. And for wanderers, we got multiple Loudred throughout the cave. You'll need an extra for living decks, Swoobat near the soothing wetlands entrance, Poliwrath also near the soothing wetlands entrance, Golduck across the water, Druddigon up the ramp, and Gigalith just a little further up from Druddigon. Moving to Warm-Up Tunnel, we have Sandshrew, Cubone, and Kangaskhan. And in the Pot Bottom Desert, we have Torkoal as a visible encounter, and Rhyperior on the northern end of the desert. On an island in the Insular Sea, we have Execute as a visible encounter, and Alakazam as a wanderer. And in the water, we have Clauncher, sword only, Clawitzer, sword only, Skrelp, shield only, Dragalge, shield only, and Horsey. And we also have the unending waves of Sharpedo chasing after you. Moving to January 31st, there is a blizzard in the Crown Tundra. This means all Pokemon except Ice types take 1/16 of their health and damage every turn. Starting at the Slippery Slope, we have Piloswine, Jinx, Amora, and Audino. And we have Smoochum as a hidden encounter. For the Wanderers, we have Mamoswine and Frostlass near the train station. At the Giant's Bed, we have Stonejourner, sword only, Nidoran male, Nidoran female, and Absol. And as wanderers, we have Nidorino near the Iron Ruins, Aerodactyl between the Iron Ruins and the Old Cemetery, Glaceon near the ruins where you find the mare, Nidoqueen by these small lakes near Slippery Slope, Nidorina by the small lakes as well, and Nidoking right next to the Slippery Slope entrance. And we have Gyarados as a wanderer in this small body of water near Slippery Slope. Traveling up Slippery Slope, we will catch Darumaka, sword only, and Beldum as a visible encounter. Then for wanderers, we got Metagross down the side path next to the Ice Carrot Patch, Metang up from the Ice Carrot Patch following the main path, Darmanitan just a little further up from Metang, and Auroros next to the entrance to Tunnel to the Top. Speaking of, we now enter Tunnel to the Top where we catch Bagon, sword only, and catch 2 for living decks, Gibble, shield only, and catch 2 for living decks, Zubat, Carbink, and Clefairy, which you'll need to breed an extra for Cleffa if you didn't already get it in our raid den. And for the Wanderers, we got Golbat in the main chamber when you first enter, as well as at this dead end where you get Fire Blast. You'll need 2 if you want a living dex. Clefable can be found at the bottom of this path near a side exit with a secret path going deeper. Follow the side path and you will find Salamence in Sword and Garchomp in Shield. Exiting the main path, you reach Path to the Peak where you encounter many Frostmoths. Fly back down to the Giant's Bed and head to the Old Cemetery for a Dracloak, visible encounter, and a Poltegeist. Next, we got the Giant's Foot where we will catch Copperajah, Archon, and Claydol on land, as well as Ammonite, sword only, Kabuto, shield only, and Feebas in the water. And finish it off by fishing for 2 Lileep, 2 for living decks. Feebas is an interesting one because it can be found at the Giant's Bed, Giant's Foot, or the Roaring Sea Caves while surfing at a 1% chance. Or instead, you can go fishing on this small island on Route 2 for a 2% chance. Or you can fish at the island Keldeo spawns at the Balamir Lake for a 5% chance. After spending some time researching, I found the best way to find Feebas was to ride down this strip of water at the Giant's Foot and into the Roaring Sea Cave. Turn around once you reach roughly this spot, then turn back and repeat. This one took just under 10 minutes to catch, while the longest one was fishing on Route 2, which took nearly an hour. Entering the Roaring Sea Cave, we catch Dano, sword only, Larvitar, shield only, and Riolu as a visible encounter. Then, in the first chamber, we find Omastar in sword, and Kabutops in shield. Then, following this path down, we find Hydreigon in sword, and Tyranitar in shield. You can exit the cave right next to where you find Hydreigon and Tyranitar in order to reach the Frigid Sea, where you'll catch Icecue, shield only, Sveal, Avalugg, and Tortuga. You can head to the island where you found Cobalion to find several Celios and a Walrein. Afterwards, head to the 3-Point Pass where the Split Decision Ruins is to find a Dragapult. Then we will finish off the day by going to the Lakeside Cave and catching Mawile, sword only, Sableye, shield only, Aron, Ferroseed, and Noivern, as well as Aggron, Ferrothorn, Colossal, and Lairon. Moving on to February 1st, we have a Blizzard in the Wild area. Fortunately, we won't be doing much. In the Rolling Fields, we will catch a Pancham in the Western Grass, then Delibird, Vanillite, and Metapod in any of the other grass patches. We also have Swinub as a hidden encounter in any grass patch. Then we will catch Onyx right next to the meetup spot, and Mime Jr. along the left wall by this raid den. Then we will make a quick stop by the Giant's Cap to catch a Dodler before ending the day. Next we go to February 15th for overcast weather in the Isle of Armor, and we start off by going to the Forest of Focus for a Scolipede, sitting here next to the pond. Then we move to Loop Lagoon for a Pincurchin, and Chansey as visible encounters in the grass, Sandygast on the beach, Tentacruel in the water, Malamar on the center island, Zoroark also on the center island in the back, and Palosand on the small beach on the side of Loop Lagoon. Then we go to the Pot Bottom Desert for Jang Mo-O, sword only, and catch 2 for living decks, and Sandile for visible encounters. And for the Wanderers, we have Krokorok all over the desert, and Crocodile at the northern end of the desert. Now, on to March 1st, where we have another big day. First, we are heading to the Giant Seat for a Bronzor visible encounter, followed by multiple Wanderers. We have Steelix just across the bridge in front of the Rock Spires, Duraludon behind the Rock Spire, Bisharp also by the Rock Spire but on the northern end, and Vikavolt located at the bottom of this cliff. Then we head to the Stony Wilderness where we catch Bounsweet in the northeast grass, Toxicroak in the brown grass, shield only, Cottony as a hidden encounter in any grass, and Ribombee as well in any other grass. Then we go to the Giant's Cap for Lanoon, and Gloom as visible encounters, and Eldegoss as a hidden encounter, before catching the Wanderers, Gengar at the bottom of the hill, Cinccino halfway up the hill, and Doublade near the top. Then we head back down to the Dusty Bowl for Hitmonlee, sword only, Hitmonchan, shield only, Braviary, sword only, and Mandibuzz, shield only. Braviary and Mandibuzz are flying Pokemon that spawn in this spot. They spawn like a Wanderer here, but respawn infinitely. Also, we can get a Sunstone for Helioptile here by this small stone pillar. Then we go to the Giant's Mirror to catch Corsola, shield only, and catch 2 for living decks, Butterfree, and Tranquil as visible encounters. Then we have Roselia as a hidden encounter, and Machamp as our Wanderer, located just north of the pond. And we will finish off the day by going to the Lake of Outrage, where we have a large list of Pokemon to catch. Our visible encounters are Garbodor, Drapion, Golurk, Ditto, and Hitmontop. The hidden encounters are Skuntank, Grimmsnarl, and Pangoro. You can also get Espeon at the bottom of the hill by the Big Stone Ring, and Hatterene at the top of the hill. Next, we move to March 15th, which is clear weather at the Isle of Armor. We will start at the Soothing Wetlands for 3 Wanderers. Lopunny in the Patch of Flowers, Licky Licky near the Brawler's Cave entrance, and Dreadnought, who can be found just about everywhere. Then we move to Challenge Road where we catch Mienfoo, Skarmory, and Rockruff as visible encounters. Lycanroc can be found at the halfway point near the top of the stairs, and Mienshao near the Brawler's Cave entrance. Then we head down to the Training Lowlands to catch Pinsir, sword only, Heracross, shield only, Lillipup, Tauros, Miltank, and Scyther. Then we go fishing at this spot for a Carvanha. At the bottom of the stairs that lead to Challenge Road is Herdier, and at the entrance to Warm-Up Tunnel is Stoutland. Then we will stop at the Pot Bottom Desert for a Marowak just north of the entrance, And we will go to the Workout Sea and head to this large island in the back for an executor. And we will finally be getting that whale lord that we've been seeing in the distance this whole time. Also, be sure to save before trying to catch it, because if you fail, it has a 1 in 100 chance to respawn every day. So you may have to wait hundreds of days before it returns. And we will finish off the day by heading to the Honeycomb Island to catch Petalil, Combi, and Lilligant. March 31st is overcast weather in the Crown Tundra. To start, we will go to the Old Cemetery for a Trevenant located between this cliff and the ruined walls, then move up to Snowslide Slope for a Weavile right on the path at the bottom near Giant's Bed. Then we move on to Ballamere Lake where we will catch Boltund, Swablu, and Tyrant for visible encounters. We will also catch Dratini, Anorith, and Relicanth surfing in the water, and lastly we will get Tyrantrum, located where you spawn when you fly to Ballamere Lake, and Altaria on the southwest side of the lake. Next we move on to April 1st, where there is a sandstorm in the wild area. Remember, sandstorms deal 1/16 of your health every turn unless you are a rock, ground, or steel type. We will start in the rolling fields where we will catch Baltoy, Bunnelby, Dwebble, Crustle on the west side of the rolling fields, and Mudsdale on the east side of the rolling fields. Then we move to West Lake Axwell, where we will catch a Nincada as a hidden encounter, 2 for living decks. Then we will move on to the Stony Wilderness for Bonsly as a visible encounter. Then we have 3 Wanderers: Sigilith on the eastern side of the area, Dust Noir, located just north of the massive bridge, and Sarina, located in this northwestern area here. And we will wrap up the day at the Lake of Outrage to catch Zuelis, sword only, Pupitar, shield only, and Excadrill as visible encounters, and finish off with catching Umbreon located next to the Stone Ring. Then we jump to April 15th for rain at the Isle of Armor. This will be a quick day. We will just go to the Soothing Wetlands for a Politoed located at the big pond with a trunk in it, and Meryl, which is just south of the Forest Focus entrance. Then we head into the Forest of Focus for Excelgor next to the pond, and Amoongus on the other side of the first bridge. Then we will jump to April 30th for an even quicker day in the Crown Tundra. We will be going to the Ballamere Lake for a Whimsicott at the southwest side of the lake, and that's it. May 1st will be a big day with normal weather in the wild area. Starting off at Rolling Fields, we will catch a Vespiquen with 2 locations near the meetup spot. Then we will go to the Dappled Grove for a Nuzleaf, sword only, Lombre, shield only, Oddish, and Hoot for visible encounters. Then we have Seedot, sword only, Lotad, shield only, and Badu for hidden encounters. Then for our Wanderers, we have Vileplume near the western edge of the map, and at the northern end of Dappled Grove we will find a Shift Tree and sword, and Ludicolo and shield. At the East Lake Axwell we will catch Shelder while surfing, Cloisters south of Axuzai, and Seekings scattered about the lake. Heading on to Axuzai, we got Beware, Kingler, and Machoke as visible encounters, and our hidden encounters are Unpheasant, Diggersby, and Steenie. Then at the center of the island we have Haxorus. Then we move on to North Lake Miloke and catch Lucario up the hill overlooking Giant Seat. Then move to the Motostoke Riverbank for a Munchlax visible encounter, as well as the Snorlax in front of the bridge, and Conkeldurr east of the pond. Then we will continue north to Bridgefield to catch Gallade on the tiny island, and move even further north to the Dusty Bowl to catch Dubwool as a hidden encounter, Flygon, located near the giant archway by Stony Wilderness, and Komoo, located at the back of Dusty Bowl in the clearing by the pond, sword only. And we finish off the day by going to the Lake of Outrage and catching Leafeon by the Stone Ring. May 15th is Harsh Sun in the Isle of Armor. First, we stop at the Forest of Focus and catch Fomantis as a visible encounter. Then we catch Lurantis, which are multiple scattered throughout the Forest of Focus, Tangrowth, located next to the pond with a raid den in it, and Larvesta, located at the dead end here with the Buried Tree. Heading to Challenge Road, we are grabbing Salazzle, located by the Brawler's Cave entrance. Then we're going to the Pot Bottom Desert to catch Volcarona at the top of the tallest hill, and finish off at Loop Lagoon, where we are catching a Fletchling as a visible encounter in the tall grass, Fletchinder while surfing, and Talonflame at the big island in the center. May 31st is Harsh Sun in the Crown Tundra. we will be going to the Giant's Foot, where our visible encounters are Centiscorch and Magmar, and our hidden encounters are Sizzlipede, Magby, and Cufant. Then we go to the Frigid Sea and catch Caracosta right at the border between the Frigid Sea and 3 Point Pass. This Wanderer spawn point acts differently than the usual ones. When you reach it from the 3 Point Pass, it is a Magmortar, but if you instead reach it from the Frigid Sea, it is a Caracosta instead. If it is a Magmortar, just walk out of spawn range towards the Frigid Sea, then walk back and it should be fixed. If you catch Magmortar here, you won't be able to catch Caracosta in the same spot, so make sure you catch Caracosta first and the Magmortar elsewhere. Speaking of which, Magmortar can be found at the Balamir Lake near these ruins, which will finish off the day. June 1st is another massive day with fog in the wild area. We start off at Rolling Fields and get ourselves a Natu through Hidden Encounter, then get Curlia near the meetup spot, and Gardevoir at the western border near Dappled Grove. Next we go to Axuzai to get a Drifloon as a visible encounter, then we go to Bridgefield and get Elgium as a visible encounter, and Litwick, as well as Palpitoad, and Togepi as hidden encounters. Then we finish off this area by getting the 3 Wanderers, Beheeyem located on the western side of the Bridgefield near the pond, Obstagoon near the nursery, and Masharna on the small island. Then we make a quick trip to the Stony Wilderness to get a Togetic as a hidden encounter, 2 if you want a living dex. Then go to the Giant's Cap to catch Gothorita in the northwestmost grass, sword only, Gothita in any other grass patch, sword only, and Solosis in any grass patch, shield only, before grabbing Aegislash at the top of the hill. Moving on to the Dusty Bowl, we pick up Duosion in shield only. Then we go to the Giant's Mirror to get Morlul and Cutiefly as visible encounters, as well as 2 Wanderers, Xatu, who is found in this patch of grass as if he was a visible encounter, and Bellossom in the northmost section, right next to Hammerlock. Then we head up to Hammerlock Hills to catch Honedge as our visible encounter, Esper and Clink as hidden encounters, and 4 Wanderers, Hawlucha, near where we just caught Bellossom, Roserade a little further northwest, Klinklang on the western side of Hammerlock Doors, and Gourgeist tucked away in the northwest corner. And finally we finish off the day by going to the Lake of Outrage to catch Gothitelle in Sword, Reuniclus in Shield, Sylveon by the Stone Ring, and Milotic in the water by the shore. July 1st is Harsh Sun in the wild area, and we are going back to the Lake of Outrage, but while the list of Pokemon is short, this one is one of the longer hunts. For visible encounters, we have Ninetales in Sword, Arcanine in Shield, Heatmor, Durant, and Lampent, and for the hidden encounters, we got Turtonator in Sword, and Rhydon. And then for our Wanderers, we got Flareon by the Stone Rings, and Chandelure at the top of the hill. Turtonator is a 2% hidden encounter here, and to add to that, there are just so many Pokemon that spawn here as visible encounters that getting to the hidden encounters is a chore. And fun fact, as of the making of this video, this is literally the only location you can get a Turtonator in any Switch game, well, except for raid dens. Same with Drampa, who will have to hunt here later too. Now it is July 15th, which is Thunder for the Isle of Armor. First, we stop at the Fields of Honor, where we catch Luxio, who has 2 locations, one for each side of the bridge. Then we head to the Forest of Focus, where we catch Goomy in Shield, Venipede, catch 2 for living dex, Tangela, and Fungus, as well as 4 Wanderers, Pichu, found all throughout the Forest of Focus, Raichu, near the entrance to the Soothing Wetlands, Luxray, found by the pond with a raid den, and Emolga, which is flying between trees. Just whistle a few times to call one down. Also, as I learned the hard way, thunderstorms do not appear specifically in the Forest of Focus unless you have completed the story on the Isle of Armor. Also, this isn't required, but I recommend you catch a few extra Goomies while you're here, because the only way to get Sliggoo is through a 2% hidden encounter later. Next, moving on to Challenge Beach, we are catching Magnemite, Shinx, Psyduck, and Dedenne as visible encounters, Staryu on the beach, and Magneton and Magnezone, who are right next to each other in the area by the beach. Just whistle them down to fight. And we finish off the day at the Honeycomb Sea. We are heading to this rock triangle to catch 2 Wanderers, Seadra and Kingdra. Moving to July 31st, which is Fog in the Crown Tundra, Remember, you cannot give status effects in the fog. We are heading to the old cemetery to catch 2 Pokemon, Mimikyu, a visible encounter, and Rapidash, who is a wanderer who is just kinda hanging out in the center of this clearing. Also, it is shield only. Next is October 1st, which is rain in the wild area. First, we go to West Lake Axwell to catch Wooper, Krabby, and Timpole as visible encounters. In the water, we have Frillish, Goldeen, and Magikarp if you somehow didn't catch one already. Then we have 2 wanderers, Quagsire, who is at the northeast end of the bridge, and Lapras, who is by the southeast shore. Landing at Axuzai, we catch Crawdon as our visible encounter, and Charjabug as a hidden encounter. And we finish off the day at the Lake of Outrage once again to catch Seismitoad, Araquanid, and Gallisopod for visible encounters, as well as Vaporeon by the Stone Rings. And for our very last day is November 1st, where we will have Thunder in the wild area. First, we start at Rolling Fields, where we pick up a Manectric near the meetup spot, then go to the Watchtower Ruins, which is the only time we've ever been here, oddly enough. Here, we catch a Ghastly as a visible encounter, and a Pidove as a hidden encounter. Then we go to the Stony Wilderness for a Dewpider, then finish off at the Lake of Outrage, where we catch Rotom, a visible encounter, Barraskewda while surfing, Lantern, a wanderer in the water, Jolteon, a wanderer by the Stone Rings, and for our hidden encounters, we have Drampa, shield only, Sliggoo, and Dreepy, all 3 of which are 2% encounters. Our list of Pokemon is nearly done, and there are only 5 more to catch. The rest are breeding and evolutions. The first 4 are the 4 fossil Pokemon of this game. Fortunately, you have just date skipped nearly a whole year and have accumulated a lot of watts. So we will go to the Digging Duo located in Bridgefield by the nursery and talk to the one on the left, the Skill Brother. He can get you all 4 fossils, unlike the Stamina Brother, who can only get you 2 depending on which version you're playing. The odds of getting a fossil are low, 5% for your game's fossil, and 1% for the ones not of your game. Regardless, you should have more than enough watts. Just stand in front of him and mash A until he has given you 2 of each fossil. Then, return to Route 6 and deposit your fossils for 4 Pokemon. Dracozolt is Bird and Drake fossil, Arctozolt is Bird and Dino, Dracovish is Fish and Drake, and Arctovish is Fish and Dino. The only Pokemon we need left to catch is Spiritomb. For that, we're gonna have to get a bit creative. Originally, you would go to this grave at the Balamir Lake and interact with it. You would then need to interact with 32 people, either online or through local communication, then return here to find Spiritomb. Unfortunately, this game is now 6 years old and probably longer if you're watching this, and, well, you're not likely to find anyone. There are 3 ways to get around this, and I'll go through each from easiest to hardest. First, if you have a Spiritomb from any other game, you can drop it off in Sword or Shield, breed it at the nursery, and the egg will be native to Sword and Shield and count towards the home Pokedex. Second, if you do not have Spiritomb, but have Pokemon Scarlet or Violet, you can go to this location on your map and catch a Spiritomb there. Then, bring it to Sword or Shield and breed it for a native Spiritomb. Lastly, I have found a way to get this specific Spiritomb to work, but it requires 2 Nintendo Switches. All you need to do is put both profiles in roughly the same place, interact with the other profile, then use the date skip method to reset for a new day and interact again. Honestly, I was surprised this worked. It is tedious because you have to interact with the other character, then go back to a raid den, date skip, then repeat the process 32 times. But the game doesn't care if it's the same person, as long as it's not on the same day. And with that, we are on to our last 2 sections of the video, breeding and evolution. Starting with breeding, I have good news. If you are not doing a living dex, and you have caught all 3 of the baby Pokemon through raid dens, and you have been diligent enough to not evolve any Pokemon before depositing them into home, then you don't have to breed a single Pokemon. But if you want a living dex and didn't catch all 3 raid den baby Pokemon, then you will need to breed 10 Pokemon. Wobbuffet to Wynot, Clefairy or Clefable to Cleffa, Jigglypuff or Wigglytuff to Igglybuff, 2 Grookey, 2 Scorbunny, 2 Sobble, 2 Charmander, 2 Bulbasaur, 2 Squirtle, and 2 Porygon. These are all pretty simple. Grab that Ditto you got it at the Lake of Outrage earlier, throw it in with whatever you need a baby of, spin around until the nursery lady does this, then receive the egg, and spin around again until it hatches. The only Pokemon you should be aware of is Wynot. If you put a Wobbuffet in the daycare with Ditto, then all you're going to get is another Wobbuffet. For Wynot, you must first give Wobbuffet a Lax Incense, which can be bought in Hulberry at this vendor. And finally, we are down to evolutions, so I'll go through this list one at a time. Grookey evolves into Thwackey at level 16, Thwackey evolves into Rillaboom at 35, Scorbunny evolves into Raboot at level 16, Raboot evolves into Cinderace at 35, Sobble evolves into Drizzile at 16, Drizzile evolves into Inteleon at 35, Nincada evolves into Ninjask at level 20, but make sure to have an extra Pokeball, specifically a Pokeball in your inventory, and an empty slot in your party when you do evolve, so that you can also get Shedinja at the same time. Cherubi evolves into Cherrim at level 25, Original Form Meowth evolves into Persian at level 28, Milcery evolves into Alcremie by spinning while Mercury holds a sweep. You should have one from earlier that you picked up in Hammerlock by the Pokeball statue. Applin evolves into Flapple by giving it a tart apple. Applin also evolves into Appletun by giving it a sweet apple instead. Farfetch'd evolves into Surfetch'd by landing 3 crits in one battle. You can do this by giving it a dire hit in battle, or making sure it holds a leak, a 5% chance on each wild Farfetch'd. Scraggy evolves into Scrafty at level 39. Corsola evolves into Cursula at level 38. Togetic evolves into Togekiss by giving it a Shiny Stone, which you already got on Route 8. Toxel evolves into Toxtricity at level 30. Helioptile evolves into Heliolisk by giving it a Sunstone, which you got at the Dusty Bull. Trapinch evolves into Vibrava at level 35. Axew evolves into Fracture at level 38. Galarian Form Yamask evolves into Runerigus by taking at least 49 damage without feigning, then walking under the stone archway at the Dusty Bowl. Original Form Yamask evolves into Cofagrigus at level 34. Galarian Form Mr. Mime evolves into Mr. Rhyme at 42. Charmander evolves into Charmeleon at level 16. Charmeleon evolves into Charizard at level 36. Type Null evolves into Silvally through Friendship. Sliggoo evolves into Goodra at level 50 during the rain. Jangmo-o evolves into Hakamo'o at level 35. Slowpoke evolves into Slowbro by receiving 8 Galarica Twigs, then talking to this NPC in the Workout C to get a Galarica Cuff, then giving it to Slowpoke. Slowpoke also evolves into Slowking by receiving 15 Galarica Twigs, then talking to this NPC in the Roaring Sea Caves to get a Galarica Cuff, then giving it to Slowpoke. Bulbasaur evolves into Ivysaur at level 16. Ivysaur evolves into Venusaur at level 32. Squirtle evolves into Wartortle at level 16. Wartortle evolves into Blastoise at level 36. Venipede evolves into Whirlipede at level 22. Loudred evolves into Exploud at level 40. Porygon evolves into Porygon 2 through trade while holding an upgrade, but if you send it to Legends Arceus, then it only needs the upgrade. Likewise, Porygon 2 evolves into Porygon Z through trade while holding a Dubious Disc, but if you send it to Legends Arceus, it only needs a Dubious Disc and not the trade. Bagon evolves into Shelgon at level 30. Gibble evolves into Gabite at level 24. Golbat evolves into Crobat through Friendship. Archon evolves into Archeops at level 37. Lileep evolves into Cradily at level 40. And for the final two, Swirlix evolves into Slurpuff through trade while holding a Whipped Dream, and Spritzee evolves into Aromatisse through trade while holding a Sachet. These last two can only evolve by trade, and there is no other Switch game to get them in as of the making of this video. Fortunately, you can find them both fully evolved at the Raid Den at the Lake of Outrage at the topmost den. It is a rare raid, so you will have to save the game and close it out quickly if you do not get the right raid. But once you have the rare raid set up, you have a 20% chance for a 3-star raid, 20% chance for a 4-star, and a 10% chance for a 5-star. A little quick math, and that is a 1 in 6 chance for each to appear. Just use the date skip method until they show up. Unfortunately, both are version exclusive. Aromatisse only shows up in Shield, and Slurpuff only shows up in Sword. But that is all of the Pokemon. Now you just have to deposit them all into home, log into the mobile app, go to the Sword and Shield Pokedex, and you will receive your free shiny Keldeo as a gift. Thank you so much for watching. Seriously, this took a lot of work, so if you could like and subscribe, that would be immensely helpful. Anyways, once again, thanks for watching.